Welcome back to our Choice YouTube channel. In today's class, we will learn how to make this beautiful double keyhole yoke cropped corset. It's a basque waistline corset with a bell sleeve, and it's very simple to make, and it's really beautiful as we have seen. If this is something you would like to learn, kindly stay tuned till the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so to make this corset, I already drafted my basic bodice pattern, and I have my busted that here already also. So what I did was to divide my bust span by 2 to get this center line, and after getting the center line, I connected it to the bust point, and then on my shoulder I measured what I have on my shoulder, divided by 2, and connected that to the bust point as well. So excuse me, on the under bust area, I took it out of 1 inch on both sides, did the same thing on the waistline, and I connected it, then used my curved ruler to connect that to my bust point. So that is what I have done so far. So now the first thing I'm going to do is to determine how low I want this to be. So I'm going to mark out my neckline. So I want this to have like a sit-out neckline, so I'm going to leave the depth. I'm measuring that from my upper part, that's the starting point. So I want the depth of this neckline to be around 9 inches to 9.5 inches. I want it a bit low, so I'm leaving it at 9.5 inches. You can do more or less depending on what you want. And then I'm going to be connecting because this is going to be having a yoke, and then the yoke, the armhole is also part of the yoke, so you see that in the thumbnail. So now for the yoke, I want the yoke to start around from the shoulder point. I'm measuring like 4.5 inches or 5 inches for my yoke, so I have 5 inches there. So now this 5 inches, I'm going to connect it to my neck depth to form that very deep sweetheart curve. Okay, so this is what I have now, and this upper part here is my yoke. So remember, this is a corset, so the next thing we're going to be creating now is our corset cup. So to create the first part of the cup, the center line of this corset is a bit wide, so you can use half an inch. I normally use half an inch, but this is quite wide, so you can use 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch. So if you use 1 inch, that's unfold. By the time you open it out, it's going to be 2 inches, so you have to be mindful of that. So I'm just using 3/4 of an inch now, and then I'm going to mark that, and also do the same thing on the upper part here. And then I'm going to make that into like a straight line, and then using my curved ruler again, I'm going to connect from this point to my under bust. So we've been doing this a lot, so by now I'm sure we understand how to do it. So I'm just trying to get a very nice curve. So this is the first part of my corset, and then to the other part now, you can either connect it like this, or you just tighten the on the bust area, which I normally do. So to do this now, I need to take my measurement. The bust measurement I'm working with is 38 inches, divided by 4 is 9.5. So I have 9.5 inches here, and then I'm going to add 1.5 inch seam allowance to that. And then the waistline that I'm working with is 28 inches. So 28 divided by 4 is 7 inches. So I have like 3 inches there, and I'm going to connect that now, and I have 7 inches plus my 1.5 inches seam allowance. So I'm going to connect this together, and then take my bust dart. So now for the bust dart, from my bust point there, you can either share it or you just take it on one side. So I'm taking a bust dart of 2 inches, and then I'm going to connect that to my bust point. So this is my bust dart. So now to close this bust dart, now I need to open one of my darts so that I can complete my corset cup. Okay, so I've opened this, so that I opened this dart so that I can close my bust dart, and then I'm going to complete my corset cup. So now this is me closing this dart, and then I'm going to hold it with a masking tape. So now to complete, I've held it to complete my other cup. On my actual measurement here, I'm going to come in here by 1 inch, like this. From, remember, this is my actual measurement, this is the seam allowance. I'm going to come in by 1 inch, and then I'm going to take my cuff again now, and then connect from my under bust to that point. Okay, so this is what I have now. So before I finish this, I'm going to tighten this upper part. So to do that, I'm going to measure like 1 inch, half an inch on both sides, and then I'm going to connect that to my bust point. And then I'm going to check what I have on both lines, because they have to be equal for me to connect them easily. So here I have around 3.5 inches, and here I have less. So I'm just going to extend this also by 3.5 inches. Remember, we are joining these two sides together, and then I'm going to reconnect this to my center line. I hope you understand that. Okay, so now I'll add back the shortage that I have here, because I'm still going to join this back to my yoke, so they have to be exactly the same. So I have a shortage of 1 inch here. I'm going to extend the 1 inch here also, and then I'm going to reconnect my armhole line. So I have the front body sorted. Now I'm going to cut out the rest of this fabric. So now this yoke that I have here has like a style line, so I'm still going to get to that. So this is my yoke. The next thing now is to create the style line that we have on that yoke. Okay, so this is the yoke. Now to create the double keyhole that we have there, as you can see here, so depends on how you want it basically, but the first thing you're going to do now is to create the V neckline that we have on the yoke. So you can maintain this 3 inches by 3 inches width, or you can just increase it. So I'm just going to increase it because I'm working with a net fabric. Okay, I'm going to be using doll face for this actually, so I'll just increase this by half an inch, and I'm not going to add allowance to the neckline when I'm cutting. So by the time I turn it, is going to be around 4 inches, which is fine for me. So now once I note that, I'm going to connect it to my neck depth to make my V neckline. Okay, so this is my new neckline. So to create the keyhole effect from my armhole area, I'm going to come inwards by 1.5 inches. So this is totally because this is what I want. You can just, I just want to put the measurements to this, so you can work with whatever it is that you want. Okay, so on this side also, I'm just going to measure around 1.5 inches like this, and then I'm going to note it. So from my shoulder point, I'll measure 3.5 inches at this center point. So I'm just marking the 3.5 inches there, and then I'm going to connect all of this together using my curved ruler. So I'm using the slightly curved part of the ruler because I don't want it too sharp. So I'm connecting this to this, and then on this other side also I'm going to connect the other one. Okay, so this is the keyhole that I'm going to have here. So like I said, if you want it higher or bigger than this, you just need to make your necessary adjustments, but I like what I have here, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. So now I'm cutting out the V neckline first. Then after cutting the V neckline, I'm cutting out the yoke, the style line that I have there, the keyhole. So I'm cutting it, and this is what it looks like. So if you are not okay with what you have here, you can also change it at any point in time. So this is what it's going to look like, and I think I like what I have. So I'm just going to keep this aside and cut out the rest of my corset. So I'm cutting the first cup, and here I'm cutting the next cup. So remember that I withdrew my armhole cuff, so I'll make sure that my bust cup line also touches this new armhole curve. So once it touches it like that, I can now cut out this curve as well. So these are my center front and my side front, and these are my cups. So this is the first one and this is the second one. So now I'm going to label these cups. This is my center front side, and this is the side that goes to the side front. So I'm going to keep this aside now and bring this in. So if you notice, this has like extra inches. So this is the 2 inches that I used to create my bust dart, because I don't remember we closed a bust dart there, and our side has to be the same. This is my back body, so you can see that it is exactly the same here. So the 2 inches that I used to close my bust dart is the excess that you have on the center front. So I explained this in my bustier tutorial. So if you don't know how we came about this, you can check out that tutorial. But basically what this means is that, remember, we went down by 2 inches on our bust line, and then I closed it, which was why we have this masking tape here. So because we're going to be sewing the front and back together, the half length of the front is going to be shorter because we have closed 2 inches here. So now that 2 inches is what you have here as the excess. So now I'm going to close the dart on this because I don't want to have a seam line as my center front area. So I'm going to take the 2 center front and side front together, and then I'm going to close the dart with a masking tape. So once I close the dart, I'm going to be having just one piece now. I'm not going to have 2 separate pieces anymore. I have just one piece, and I'm not going to be having any seam here. Remember, this is a net fabric, so I'm trying to reduce sewing as much as possible. So I have this now as one single piece. So now we work on the back. Okay, so this is the back panel. Now I'm going to take my back neckline measurement, my back bust measurement also. That's 9.5 inches plus 1.5 seam allowance, just like I did for the front. And then for the waistline, 7 inches. I have 3.5 inches here, and then I'm going to connect that, continue that, and I have 7 inches and my 1.5 inches seam allowance. So this here is my back dart. And then for the yoke of the back, you want to have a yoke of at the back, so you design how you want your yoke to be. But I'm just going to maintain the V neckline that I did for the front also, and I'm stopping it at the armhole line, just like that. And then the yoke, I'm just going to maintain this armhole line. So I'm going to cut out this upper part as my yoke, and then this lower part is going to be my main body. So you can see that the back is quite simple. So now I'm cutting out my back panel as well. Okay, so now this is the back, so I'm just going to cut this out now, and that's going to be my yoke. So again, just like I did for the front also, I'm going to close up this back dart because I don't want to have joining at the back also, because this is a net fabric, like I said, and I don't want it to have too much seam. So here I'm going to close the back dart as well, and then I'm going to have it as just one single piece, just like I have for the front. So now I'm going to take this to my main fabric now, and then I'm going to cut out my main fabric. So this is the back, and this has the front pattern. So this is the 2 back pattern, and then for the front we have our main bodies, we have our cup, and then we have our yoke. So I'll go over now to my fabric now and cut this pattern on my fabric. Okay, so I've gone ahead to cut this on my fabric. I'm using this net lace fabric, and this is the center front and the side front. Remember, we joined them together. This is the back panel, and these are the cups. So for the cups, I cut out the lace and also the plain fabric for lining it, and then I went ahead to cut out my wording also, because this is what I'm going to use to pad it. You can also use a black cup if that is what you want. These are the 2 cups, and then these are my yoke. So this is the front yoke and this is the back yoke, and then I added allowances for turning it. So now for the front, you notice that it's a bit longer than what we have here on our waistline. This is because I want to make this into a basque corset. So if you want it to be a regular corset, you just maintain the length that you have here, but because I want this to be a basque corset, you can see that the back remains the same. I want the back to be of equal length, so it's not going to affect it. By the time I join it together, it's still going to be the same. So to create this basque effect now, I'm just going to slant it from the side at the waistline here towards the center front area. So you can make it exactly just V shape like this, or you can just give it this round shape effect like I am doing. Okay, so now this was what my front looks like now, and this is the back. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to fix the cup first, and to do this I'm going to fuse my gum stay to my main fabric, and then I'm going to sew the cups together, both the lining and the main fabric. So for the lining I cut 4 for each because I'm going to be lining it. So I cut 4 plain, 2 plain for the lining and 2 for the main fabric. So I'll go ahead and sew this together, and then also I'm going to turn my yoke. So now for the yoke, I'm going to turn out everything and just leave space at the shoulder area and also the armhole area. So I'll turn all of this now and bring it back to show us what we have. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew them together, and this is what the cups looks like. You can see that it is standing on its own and it has enough room space for the bust. So I'll go ahead and iron this seam allowance open. This is the other side for the cup, and these are the linings for the cup. Also, I've sewn the yoke. So this is what the front yoke looks like. This is the first side, and this is the other side of the front yoke as well. So I'm going to press this open. So this is what it's going to look like. This is the V neckline and the keyhole that will have there, and these are the 2 back yoke also. So now the next thing now is to start creating the boning for the center front. Okay, so I'm going to be using the regular boning, and I'm going to be wrapping the boning. Okay, so I wrap the boning, and then I'm going to place it on the channels that I want. So open it up. This is what the center front looks like now. Okay, so I've gone ahead to open my stitches. As you can see now, it's lying really flat, and I've ironed it inside out with my tailor's ham. So this is the other cup, and these are the 2 linings for the cup. They've also been ironed. So now this is my yoke for the back. It's also ironed. This is the yoke for the front. So I've ironed everything out. The next thing now is to create my boning. So to do this now, like I said, I'm using a regular boning. So I cut a fabric of 1.5 inches width, and then I cut my desired length for the boning. So after cutting the fabric now, I placed the boning on the right side of the fabric, and then I just sew it at that tiny edge. Okay, so this tiny edge where you can sew on. Okay, so this tiny edge where you can sew on your boning, you sew it like this. So after sewing it, I'm just going to bring the fabric outwards like this, and then wrap it around the boning. So after wrapping it around the boning like this, I'll take it to the sewing machine now, and then I'm going to sew it on this side. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. So now, depending on the amount of boning channels that you want, you wrap as much as you want actually. So now I've gone ahead to do this. Okay, so I've added my boning channels to my main bodies. As you can see, I added around 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, so you can add as much as you want So this is what it looks like on the right side, and this is what the wrong side looks like. So you sew it as neat as possible. So when you are sewing this to your channel, remember when you're wrapping your boning, I mean, just make sure you have like half an inch allowance. You don't cut it exactly on the boning area, because you're still going to add our bra cups to this, and we're going to hem it on the lower part also. So you leave that allowance of half an inch on both sides. So after wrapping it like this and then folding it over, when you finish sewing this, you don't cut exactly on this boning area. You leave like half an inch on top and then half an inch below, so that I can turn this easily. So now the next thing is for me to turn my bra cup. Remember, this is not going to be having a lining, so we're going to be piping most of it. So I'll turn the upper part of my bra cup. Now I'll just place the lining on the main fabric, and then I'm going to run a stitch on the upper part to turn it. And after turning the upper part, I'm going to sew in my bra cup on both sides like this before we add our yoke. Okay, so I've gone ahead to turn this out, and I've added it around like this. So you can, assuming you're using a bra cup, you can actually leave this without the lining, but because I used a wadding to pad mine, I don't want to leave my wadding like that. So that was why I decided to add a lining to this. So this is what I have so far now. So I'm going to be piping these rough edges with bias, or you can just cut your plain fabric on bias and use that to pipe it. So the next one now is to add my yoke. Okay, so you can actually use your yoke to turn it on this upper part also, but I want to make this as simple as possible. Remember, we are trying to simplify this as much as possible. So that was why I already turned my yoke. I'm just going to place it like this and then sew. Okay, so I'm just going to place it very neatly and then sew it to the upper part like this. So you can sew from inside or outside. So this tiny V part that I have, I'm just going to fold it in a bit before placing my yoke underneath it, and then I'm going to sew my yoke down. So I'll do the same thing for the back also. I'm going to sew down the yoke before turning the upper part. So let me just sew the yoke and bring it back to show us. Okay, so I have added my yoke. This is what the front yoke is looking like now, and this is the back yoke. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to turn my shoulder neatly like this. I'm going to place the front and back together, and then I'll go ahead and turn the yoke, and then I'm going to join it on the sides. So I've turned the shoulder now, and then I also sew it on the side with my seam allowance. So this is what I have so far. I'm here to pipe this place, so I'm going to pipe it with my bias. So this is what it looks like. This is the front and this is the back. Okay, so now you just fix your zipper on this zipper allowance that we have here. Now we move straight to the sleeve. The sleeve is actually a simple sleeve. It's a combination of a basic sleeve and flare. So I have my basic sleeve here ready, and then I use the hem of this sleeve to draft a 360-degree flare. So the flare is a double flare. One is 6 inches long and the other is 5 inches long. So I'm going to open this flare on one end, and I'll take the long and the short one together and sew it to the hem of my basic sleeve. So this is the longest. I'll just lay the short one on the long one now, and then I'm going to open up my basic sleeve, and then I'll sew it to it like this. So I'll do the same thing for the other sleeve also. Okay, so this is what the corset is looking like. You can see the double keyhole that we have there. You can see the cupped part of the corset, and you can see our boning channels that we have there. So you can have as many boning as you want, and you do the same thing for the back. You just need to wrap your boning before you fix it on your main bodies like this. And this is the bell sleeve that is also fixed already. So I hope you enjoyed making this tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.